Hi, my name is Danni, and like Pat, I was actually a codebar student, and then I became a coach, and then I became a software developer. And I think what really helped me when I was changing careers and doing a whole load of stuff was the pet projects I did. I mean, there were a whole range. I do love making drum machines. I did technically make a stalking app yeah, we're not going to go into that. There were certain things I learned from each one of my pet projects, and I still do them now, that have helped me in my professional career. And hopefully, some of the stories will help you as well in terms of switching, coding, arguing with project managers. So, how to go from pet projects to production code? Well, they say the happy path is easy, and in software development, that can lead to a whole load of bugs. That's a trap I fell into in the beginning, and a lot of people will fall into. You kind of think everything's going to go well, and then you realize, just like life, the internet is a complete and utter mess. Then you have to think about keeping the receipts. I don't know if any of you watched that podcast. I love that podcast. But you have to keep the receipts. You have to know what happened, when it happened, and what the result was. And that will help as well when it comes to debugging and figuring out how to make something better, faster, more performant, and a whole load of other things. That kind of sounds a bit depressing, because at this stage you must be thinking, well, how do I avoid all these mistakes? Well, there was a famous gang of four, a group of old white men, who came up with some really great ideas and some design patterns. And they've done all that heavy lifting for you. So be aware of that and be aware of the history, and that will save you making a lot of mistakes in the future. But then another thing is, you're in software development hopefully because you like it. And
sorry, could you move just closer for the virtual people
yes,
to hear you?
sorry. Well, you're in software development hopefully because you enjoy it and you enjoy some sort of tech or how it's used to make things better. And so do the day job most of the time, but also enjoy the detours. Go to the festivals and blog and write. I mean, in an answer to your question previously, I have no idea about agriculture and all of that stuff. But via one pet project, I've ended up building or helping to build an app to help farmers in East Africa. So use that passion you have when you started to drive your career forward. And so here's how I did each of these things. Before I go into that, though, I should probably tell you a bit about who I am. So music is my first love. And the way I actually decided to switch careers is I basically saw a Google Doodle of a drum sequencer on Google, and I decided to make one. And then I came to codebar to do that. But before that, my background was in physics, and then I got a life and ended up becoming a teacher, and then realised kids are not for me, like, no offence. And so if I've switched to software development and tech, hopefully I will not keep fighting my project managers. But there we go. So the first one, the easy path. Right, so this is a definition from Wikipedia. So it's a default scenario where you're basically thinking everything is going to go perfectly well, nothing wrong is going to happen, and that's what we're going to code for. But think about that in real life, for example. So let's say, for example, and this is also an example of a default scenario that has gone wrong. Say, for example, you want to order some food, right? You'll get out your phone and go to an app, and hopefully you'll be able to order stuff. I love ordering sushi. And then you've got this thing, and then it will send a message to the restaurant. The restaurant will get your food order, and hopefully you will get some driver turning up at your door asking for a 5-star rating, but all of your food is in place. That's the happy scenario. There are the cases when they will get your order very, very wrong. They will miss out the sake. And then you can hopefully give a 1-star rating and put a very helpful message on the review. And that's a bit like, well, that is the internet, but that is it in a nutshell. So when I wanted to start making this drum sequencer app, and I first came to Codebar, I thought I'm going to record some music and then upload it, like have HTML, upload it, and then play it that way. And then a coach who was also very interested in music introduced me to something called Web Audio API. And the benefit of this was not only did I have to be restricted by going off and recording perfect audio files and playing them via the site that I was building, this API, you could actually create sounds digitally, adjust it, and just do a whole load of different tricks on it. And the beauty was, I never actually had to touch that code. Just like by you ordering your food online via an app, you never have to go to the restaurant, you never have to speak to the chef, you never have to tell them not to put so much pepper in whatever you have ordered. It's all done in the background for you. And so I love them. Application programming interfaces, APIs, they're great. But just like when you're ordering via Uber and something like that, something can go wrong. And if you've only done it for the default happy scenario, how do you figure that out? Well, what you need to do is you need to try and account for that. So that first one, that create sound function, that's the kind of, it's not the idiot proof, it's the idiot version. So that's when you say, I'm going to go and send some information, send some parameters, use this API, and I'm going to get my sound back perfectly. Yeah, you're dreaming. What you can do instead is do something better, which is the middle one, and say, I'm going to try to use the API to get the sound back. If it works, everything is fine. If it doesn't work, I can catch why it doesn't work in some sort of exception, and I can have some sort of alternate path. I can either get a backup from somewhere, or I can, I don't know, just tell the user the thing's not working. They can figure it out. But that helps a lot because you're assuming it's going to go well. And most of the time it does go well. But every now and again, I need to make sure if it doesn't go well, my user isn't just stuck. And then what's even better is don't just assume that the alternate path you've provided is going to work. Test it and make sure it actually works. You can mock it or you can do whatever you want, but you can use this kind of format, and it's a very, like, everyone uses it, like the given, when, then scenario. And you say, given I'm going to try and do this, when this happens, do I get this result? And those tests not only help you, but they help other people. So when you go from working on your own projects, and only you and God knows what you've created, it's all right. But when you go and work in a team and you've seen like Git blame, you don't want to be the one that gets the Git blame. So you want to say, I tested it, it works. Or at least you want to be able to let people know what the purpose of the code was. And you also want to be able to refactor or change it and know that if you've changed anything, that you haven't broken anything you didn't mean to break. So that was the drum sequencer project. That one, the first one was done in JavaScript, and I was quite happy with it. So yeah, learned about testing, learned about exception handling, and yeah, that was my first foray into the web and APIs. So, what's next? Well, being me and being slightly obsessed with music and drum sequencer, I then decided to build a new one, but this time using Java, which is a lot more verbose and slightly brutal than JavaScript, but it's also better because you get a lot more information back. So if you've ever seen stack traces when something's blown up, if you try and compare the stack traces you get from JavaScript, I don't hate JavaScript, by the way, but yeah, to something like Java, for example, one tends to be a lot more helpful than the other. And that's what I mean by the receipts. Because you can literally get an audit trail that says what's happened, when, and it literally tells you the line that the error may have occurred on. You may look at it and think, what on earth is going on? But you can use this to also help your users as well. Because if something goes wrong in your application and you were to send that to your users, you would never see them again. I'll tell you that. So what you need to be able to do is use that information to send something useful back. So I love Zara. You guys, I'm going to say you all love Zara, right? You know when you go and pay for something and they give you the receipt, right? And they print their card number on the receipt and stuff. So yeah, okay, they give you the receipt because it's good so that you know how much you paid and stuff, which I never look at. But they also put your card number. But do you notice how they never put your entire card number on the receipt? They only ever put like the last 4 digits, which is good for security. But try and use that as well when you think about the messages you're going to give back to your users when something goes wrong. So, which message do you reckon is a good one? And which one, I'm very sarcastic, which one do you reckon is good? And which one do you reckon is not so good? So hands up the one on the right. That's very good. Hands up the ones on the left. Okay, everyone's hand should have gone up. It's not perfect, but hey. Anyway, so you entered the wrong password a lot. Are you okay? Number 1, you entered the wrong password. So that literally tells me straight away, if I were a hacker, for example, that the username is correct. It's the password that's wrong. That makes my life maybe 50% easier. We're going to forget that. Are you okay? That doesn't give me an alternate way to use the program. I have to stop dead in my tracks at that point. On the other hand, I get told I've got a wrong username password combination. They probably should have had a password manager in the first place. But if there's any malicious actors, it doesn't give away too much information, just like the restricted number about your card on the Zara receipt. And it also says click here to reset. It offers an alternative solution or an alternative path when something has gone wrong. And that is really, really important for your users. Other things I learned about when it came to the Java version of this is to do with some more to do with the log messaging as well. So you can log things at different levels. You've got warning, error, and so on and so on. What you want to do is make sure the level of your log message is adequate for that purpose and adequate for that environment. Because what you'll also find is, I do say log everything, but not literally, but what you'll also find is that if you do log everything at the highest possible warning, your program is going to get very, very big. And very, very, just very big. Anyway, so what about that one? So after the music sequencer programs, I then went on to build a library app. I'm not quite sure why I did that, but I did. A library, for any of you born after the 90s, is, if you watch Netflix, it's the legal job that Joe did when they were living in Linda. If you don't, Google it. But anyway, so think about, always try and apply what you do in the real world to what you do when you're writing a program. Think about how it goes smoothly and how it can go not so smoothly. And what I mean by that is, let's say you do have a library, right? You will go in, ask for a book. Some nice person will type something into a computer now, but back in the 50s and stuff, 1950s, they actually had to go to the back, check if the book was there, bring it back, stamp it, give it to you with a return date. You had to make sure you gave it back before the return date and all of this other stuff. So it's very much a behavior, right? You're issuing a command to someone. That someone is then going to act on that command, get something, and bring it back to you. When I first did the library app, I didn't use that thinking. And what happened is I would have to build or create loads and loads and loads of different functions to accommodate for all the different types of actions. Because you can borrow a library book, you can reserve a library book, you can do a whole load of other things. And there's not just going to be you using the library, you're also going to have other people using the library at the same time. And you're going to have, a lot of user interaction and a lot of background or business logic. And when I first did it, I tied the user interaction very, very heavily to what was going on in the back. So I said, if somebody clicks this button, I need to create a function so that they can borrow the book. And then I've got a whole load of logic which says what happens when the book is borrowed and all of that. Then if somebody wants to return a book, create a function for that, and then a whole load of logic. And on a small scale, that's fine. This is like maybe just a little pet project. But when you get to really, really big scale things, and when you get to a case when you're going to have loads and loads of things going on, and loads of people there as well, that kind of structure is what you call very, very brittle. Because if you've got all these different functions, and I'm going to say like subclasses, just because I am, but if you've got all these little pieces of informational logic tied so strongly to the front, and you want to change something in one place, that can break things. And what you'll hear a lot when you go into working in a bigger team is something called separation of concerns. And it's like the idea that you kind of start to make things linked, but you don't make them so tightly joined that, I'm not going to use that metaphor, you don't make things so tightly joined that if you change one thing, they'll break. So what I had to do instead was think, what is the initiator and what is the outcome I want from it? So I have somebody saying they want to borrow a book. I say somebody saying they want to return a book. I have this logic in the back that I want them to be able to do all of these things, but I don't want it to be too tightly linked. So in summary, what you can basically do is, this is when you start to use things like interfaces. And this is when you start to use things like abstract classes. And what that meant was that I could say, every time I have my interface, so I'll just put this one up here, it makes it a lot easier. Yeah, this one makes it a lot easier. rather than having all of these like functions and subclasses and everything trying to do everything, instead I can abstract out different sections and just have one command that says execute. So somebody comes in and wants to do something, they have an execute function, and then that goes off and figures out what the best way to do it is. Now, that might sound a bit heavy and stuff like that, but how many of you use or have written languages in that use lambdas? You're doing this anyway. Because effectively what this command design pattern does is it enables you to pass methods as parameters. And that's what lambda function or lambda function programming does. So sometimes those things that were done in the 50s, or I don't actually know when that book was written, but I don't know, what is it, 70 years later? They still have a purpose. So, finally, the whole thing about following your passions. So, when I was working in a production team, or like a professional team, we'll just say, the design patterns helped a lot as well, because it helped me look at the bigger picture. I remember turning up and seeing this code, and there was like 20 different interfaces and all these abstract classes and all of this other stuff. And I was like, why on earth have you done this? Isn't this overkill? And it wasn't, though, because somebody just said to me, no, that's the strategy pattern. And as soon as they said that to me, I was able to understand how everything worked, how everything was put together, and how things could be improved on. And that's a really big thing in software development anyway. Software development is moving all the time, and you always have to be thinking about the bigger picture, not just in terms of what you're working on, but also the environment in which you're working. And one of the things I looked at while I was doing this library app project was the idea about security and authentication. Because as well as having a library, you also have the users, and you don't want anyone to be able to just go in and borrow a book under your name. So I don't know if anyone in here is old enough to remember this, but there was this actually you probably are. Right, there was this thing, I don't know, does anyone remember like Office 360? Okay, Office basically when it first came out, it's the biggest joke ever, and for not for several reasons, but what happened is when you logged on to your email account, if you went and changed the URL, you could get into someone else's email account because they hadn't done the authentication properly, right? So but I could understand now why something like that happened via working on this library app, because I could understand that, but if I've got the authentication, them saying they are who they are, who they think they are or say they are, with their username and password. But then, had I got the authorization part right, had I let them go down different paths in this application, or given them the right access. And this whole thing about security kept going, and I got really, really interested in it. And you're going to hear about security from Jessie later on. But the biggest thing, okay, well, not the biggest thing, but my best moment when it came to security was I was in China and I saw someone pay for coffee with their face. And I was like, I was just like, wow, like, Heathrow's a problem sometimes, but this person is actually paying for coffee with their face. And I thought, A, that's amazing, but B, I love my sisters, but I would not trust them with my bank account. And so it's like, it's that thing. Anyway, so I kept going with this, and I ended up looking into like security, authentication, and authorization a bit more. And I ended up building as a pet project a facial recognition app. That's Oprah, by the way. And apparently Oprah is 90% female. That does probably need some work. But that project also meant I got to work with Python, and so expanded on the languages I used, which in turn helped me understand what programs are best used for what kind of application. So, like, obviously, Python's really great for data heavy stuff. Um, anyway, long story short, I built that app, ended up writing a short story about the world ending when a behavior recognition app was built. Funnily enough, China has just released one. And yeah, I'm really interested in security now. And all of that kind of started with a drum sequencer. So keep your pet projects, because that's where you can shine, apart from work. But that's where you can learn about things and apply them to your work. That's where you can explore different ideas, and that's where you can see actually how tech is moving and which way you want to go. So I would say these are also some really great things you should have in your sack thing. I don't know. But Test Driven Development by Kent Beck, it's an amazing book. It's written in Java, but the idea of it will really help you when it comes to learning how to write really good unit tests. Design Patterns, Headfirst Java, that is also written in Java, but it's very picture heavy and picture friendly. So that one will be another good one to help you learn. The media, or different parts of social media. You've got Medium. The Airbnb blog on Medium is brilliant. It really breaks down different things they're working on. You've got TLDR. That is like a email that comes out. You sign up for it, and it's just a very short snapshot of what's happening in tech that day. YouTube, conference videos are amazing. I love them. I am obsessed with like DevOps and GoTo, because you get people like here talking about tech. So yeah, and also your communities, like number one, Codebar. You're all here, but also there are loads of other meetup groups, like on a Saturday and stuff like that. So make sure you build a strong community, and make sure you network, because that's going to be your support group, especially if you're new to tech as well. You'll all be going through the same sort of things. So having that group or that network, you will find a lot of support from it, and you can also learn a lot from it. So I finally made a QR code. I don't actually know which social media link that goes to, but yeah, I don't know. Have fun with it. But yeah, so my contact details for one of these sites are in that thing. Thank you.